Episode 11, Hephaestus, the fire that shapes the world. How do you turn a metal into gold? Not in a laboratory, not in books, but inside a human being. The ancients knew that the soul begins as raw metal, heavy, unshaped, corroded by desire, fear, and confusion, and that the only thing that can give value is fire. Metal that never enters fire never gains shape, never gains strength, and never gains worth. And the Greeks had a name for the force that burns you in order to form you, and this fire was called Hephaestus. Hephaestus is not the god who makes you powerful, he's the god who makes you something, and transformation always costs fire. To understand Hephaestus, we must first learn to see fire not as an element, but as a cosmic principle. The Pythagoreans taught that at the center of the universe burns the central fire, the very heart of all existence. Philolaos describes it as the house of Zeus, the matrix, the mother of the gods, the altar, and the measure of nature, of physis. Physis in Greek, it's the whole universe, it's the cosmos. And around this primordial fire, the heavenly bodies dance, and harmony is not poetry here, it's the architecture of reality. So Hephaestus is the fire of creation, the force that enters matter and gives it form. And this is the uniqueness of Hephaestus. He is not the god of fire. Hestia is the fire of the very existence. Hephaestus is the god who knows how fire becomes world. Fire without intelligence destroys. Fire guided by Nous, the higher mind, the higher consciousness, creates worlds. Before we go deeper, we must make here a crucial distinction, one that connects this episode to the earlier one on Demetra. Demetra, as we said, is the mother of form, but her form is archetypical. She is the invisible pattern that organizes becoming, the world of evolution, the principle that shapes the formless life force into identity, rhythm, and order. Her form governs the spiritual and intelligible architecture of life. Hephaestus, however, works at a different level. If Demetra gives the pattern, Hephaestus gives the pattern a body. So Demetra shapes the inner blueprint, and Hephaestus shapes the outer world. She is form as principle, and he is form as embodiment. And also, the lines between divine functions are never strict. The gods are not isolated departments of creation. They are interwoven expressions of a single cosmic energy. And this is why myths show marriages, jealousies, affairs, gods chasing one another, merging with one another. These are all metaphors for the interplay of universal forces, for the way one divine quality flows into another and becomes something new. Demetra forms the spiritual life of the human being, and Hephaestus completes this work by giving that inner form the very vessel of embodiment. So together they express two sides of creation, the blueprint and the realization, the pattern and then the fire that embodies it. Hephaestus as the creative power of the world of the senses. What we will talk about here is something very, very essential. The world is not constructed in order to be perfect. It is constructed in order to become, to serve evolution. This is obvious from experience itself. Our world is not flawless, it is not static, it is not complete, but this imperfection is not a defect, it serves a purpose. It is precisely because the world is not finished that movement, transformation, and evolution are possible. And this is why Plato does not describe the visible cosmos as a reality of perfection, but as the world of becoming, το γίγνεσθε, of evolution, of becoming. Becoming does not simply mean change, it means a process of formation, a movement towards something not yet fully realized, the condition of becoming what one is not yet. If the world was perfect, there would be no reason to act within it, there would be no learning, no shaping, no transformation of soul. So imperfection then does not oppose the purpose of the cosmos. It is what makes purpose possible, and this is why the cosmos is not described as gold, but as bronze. Gold is complete and unchanging. Bronze can be worked, and this is precisely the domain of Hephaestus. And Proclus, in his commentary on the Timaeus, makes this distinction explicit. Hephaestus belongs to the creative order of the gods, not the generative powers that bring life into being, and not the purely intellectual gods, but the powers that construct the visible cosmos. And this is why the theologians portray him working bronze, moving the bellows, crafting the houses of the gods, and preparing the visible seats of the world. When Proclus says that the heavens are bronze, he does not mean this literally. Bronze names a metaphysical condition. It signifies matter that has already passed through fire, not rare earth, but neither pure intellect. It is matter shaped by intelligence. In one line, we would say that Hephaestus transforms divine intelligence into structured matter. And this is why his fire is never chaotic. It is measured, directed, and constructive. Fire is his tool, and cooled earth and shaped matter is his material. Hephaestus as the archetypical alchemist of the soul. Porphyry, iron, fire, virtue. Porphyry, in his work on statues, reveals the inner symbolism of Hephaestus. It is an amazing book, that book. Fire represents primordial energy. The blue cap that Hephaestus is wearing signifies the rotation of the heavens and the descent of cosmic fire into the lower world, the lower octaves of creation. And it marks fire becoming a lesser, more constrained principle. And what about the human being here? The human being is unworked iron. Hephaestus grabs him with his tongs, he puts him in the fire, he strikes him with a hammer and burns away the rust. And this is the archetype of inner alchemy. The soul does not acquire its true shape through comfort, but through fire guided by virtue and precision, and only what endures the fire becomes form. Hephaestus as the god of art and intellect, the true meaning of techne, not skill, not technology, and not art. The Greek word techne, which is often translated as art, does not mean skill or technology. The first part of technology is from techne. And it's not art as we understand today. Socrates in Cratylus interprets it as echonoi, echonu, a possession of mind, of high consciousness, a stable disposition that grasps forms and brings them into being. So techne is the nous in action, the movement of the mind that generates form out of the formless in accordance with harmonics and rhythm. And things such as the golden ratio, for example. Plato writes in the Laws, Νόμος και τέχνη νου γέννη. Laws and techne are offsprings of nous, and according to the true nature of things. So techne should be a cosmic principle operating in the visible world through those who possess exin nous, inner clarity and harmony, high levels of consciousness, high levels of understanding the world around them in combination with the world within them, their inner world. And this is why Hephaestus, he's not a blacksmith in the trivial sense. He is the archetype of Techne, the god who translates intellectual fire into form, the one who turns energy into a body and turns the formless into harmony. Techne can be expressed in many ways, as philosophy, as rhetorics, as politics, as law, as medicine, and also architecture, painting, music, and so on. What serves the mind and the soul leads to eudaimonia, the good spirit and living in harmony, and what serves emotion and desire will bring fall. So this is the structure of Hephaestus. Fire can build or destroy, and everything depends on the mind that wields it. In the Laws, Plato dedicates the class of true creators to those who shape form, to Athena and Hephaestus. Athena is Nous, and Hephaestus is Nous applied to matter. But Techne also can be corrupted, and Plato, again in the Laws, gives us a warning of an immoral invention that imitates art, but it is only a tool of deception. Therefore, true Techne requires knowledge of what is presented, knowledge of how correct it is, and also the understanding of its moral value. Used by the wise brings Evzin, which means the good life, and used by clever people without any supervision brings decline and exploitation. The parallel with modern pharmaceuticals is unmistakable here. Plato writes, "In a city of free people, the craftsman must not use his techne, pure and genuine by its nature, to deceive his fellow citizens." And this understanding of art as transmission of order was not unique to Plato. Gurdjieff later described a parallel insight from a different language in a different time. Gurdjieff taught that humanity is not spiritually uniform, and he spoke of 7 different categories of human beings, and each level is defined by a different level of inner organization and consciousness. So according to Gurdjieff, these 7 types do not just think differently, they create differently too. Each level of being gives rise to a different kind of art. Some art is produced mechanically through imitation, habit, or social conditioning. Some rises from emotional discharge, imagination, or personal expression. Some is intellectual, clever, refined, but still subjective. But only the higher categories, what Gurdjieff calls types 5, 6, and 7, are capable of producing objective art. Art that does not express the personality of the artist, but transmits structure, proportion, and cosmic law. And this corresponds precisely to what Plato describes here. For Plato, true techne does not arise from talent, emotion, or cleverness, it arises from nous, from the high consciousness, from a level of being that is capable of perceiving form, measure, and the true nature of things. So, in this sense, Not all humans are capable of producing the same kind of art because not all humans exist at the same level of consciousness. Lower levels may imitate form, higher levels receive it. And this leads us to a crucial point. Why Greek art was often unsigned. It is no coincidence here that many ancient works were left unsigned. The creator was not understood as the source of the work, but as the receiver of form. The artist did not express himself, he aligned himself, he became a vehicle, a point of contact between the intelligible world and the material one. To sign the work would be to claim ownership, and ownership over something that was never considered personal property. Art was not an act of ego, it was an act of participation, a descent into form through a prepared human being into matter. And this is why Techne belongs to Hephaestus, because Hephaestus does not represent creativity as inspiration or talent, but as intelligence entering matter through fire. Myth illuminates truth. Fall, Limnos, Era, Aphrodite, clarified. Myth in Greek thought, as we already explained in the first episode, The Dark Psychology of Ancient Greece, is not a record of historical events or fairy tales or whatever. It has a lot of different layers. So we have metaphysics expressed in a narrative form. And the same truth can be spoken abstractly by philosophy or symbolically through myth. The fall of Hephaestus from Olympus. The myth says that Hephaestus fell from Olympus and he landed on Limnos, the island, which is a volcanic island sacred to fire. And this does not describe a cosmic accident or punishment, it describes a cosmic movement, the descent of divine fire, of intellect and formative power into the realm of matter. What philosophy calls descent into the world of the senses, myth presents it as fall. So Limnos is fire anchored now in matter, and Limnos is not chosen at random, it is a volcanic island, it is a place where fire is trapped inside stone. And this is the domain of Hephaestus. Limnos Island had the reputation of being a therapeutic island too. So Hephaestus is not only a creator here, but also a healer. The Limnian earth was believed to have therapeutic power because it carried that fire that had been cooled, measured, and stabilized. Era, the soul of the world that receives form. Hephaestus constructs a throne for Hera. And this is not, again, fairy tales. As we saw in the Hera episode, Hera is not just a queen of the gods. She is the soul of the cosmos, the rhythm of time, the principle of maturation, and the structure that allows form to endure and mature. So myth here is saying something very interesting, that formative power, formative energy gives stability to the soul of the world. So the throne is not a furniture, it is structure. Without Hephaestus, Eras' rhythm would have no vessel. And without Hera, Hephaestus' forms would have no duration. Aphrodite. Why beauty belongs to fire. The union now of Aphrodite and Hephaestus also appears puzzling unless we understand Aphrodite correctly. As we saw In the Aphrodite episode, Aphrodite is not romance or seduction. She's elxis, which means attraction. She's the force that draws beings toward harmony. And why is she associated with Hephaestus? Because form without attraction remains inert. And fire can shape matter, but without Aphrodite, form would not draw, would not bind, would not become beautiful. And myth encodes this as a marriage. Aphrodite later on unites with Ares, and this expresses a different law of attraction joined with action, a desire united with force, producing harmony. But her bond with Hephaestus reveals something else. Beauty requires measure. And measure is the work of fire guided by intelligence. So if we see this all together, the myths give us a single structure. Ares ignites force and differentiation. Aphrodite draws that force toward harmony. Hera provides rhythm, duration, and maturation. Hephaestus gives form, structure, and embodiment, and Hephaestus emerges not as a random craftsman, but as the master of transformation, creator of form, healer of imbalance, and artisan of the whole world. So myth does not explain this discursively, it actually shows it, but you just need to sit down and do your work. And once this symbolic language is understood, the myths cease to be strange, they become very, very precise. The lame god and the nature of matter. Energy distorted in descent, the ray of creation. Hephaestus is lame. Proclus writes, «Χολεύειν δε αμφωτέρης της ποσήν, to be lame in both feet». Proclus, commentary on Plato's Timaeus. The created world is described as lame, not as a defect, but because it stands at the final limit of procession. And therefore, the god who shapes this realm is portrayed as lame in both feet. Energy entering matter becomes distorted. Proclus states this plainly because he says that the created world is lame, and therefore the god who shapes this realm is portrayed as lame. And this corresponds precisely again to Gurdjieff and to Gurdjieff's ray of creation. Gurdjieff says that at the top we have pure consciousness, unity, the fire that knows itself, and as it descends, it thickens, divides, forgets, becomes mechanical, becomes matter, becomes people, and so on. The fall of Hephaestus is the fall of conscious fire into the material world. To be lame means that the soul cannot walk straight inside the world of matter. Only fire can restore it, and Hephaestus is fire. So, this is the mystery embodied in Hephaestus. Limitation is not a flaw, it is the very condition of manifestation. When light travels in a vacuum, it moves freely, undivided, at full speed. But the moment it enters matter, water, glass, crystal, whatever, it slows down, bends, refracts, and breaks into colors. It does not cease to be light, but it can no longer move as it once did. So limitation is not failure, it is the cost of manifestation. The same is true of energy, of electricity, of waves, and of consciousness. When fire descends into matter, it creates, but it cannot remain whole. The human being as the work of Hephaestus, self-knowledge, transformation, the baptism of fire. In Greek thought, the human being is shaped by the same power that shapes the cosmos. And how could it be different? We are all stardust. The soul enters the body through the power of Hephaestus, as Proclus explains. And Democritus, if I remember correctly, says that the human is a microcosm. So the human is iron waiting the hammer, and untempered material that it is needing heat, and a form that is seeking completion. Porphyry's baptism of fire becomes the path of transformation. The soul is purified, the rust falls away, the shape changes, the human remembers, and Hephaestus is the archetype of the inner alchemist, the self-maker, the god who teaches that nothing great is born without fire.
This teaching did not remain theoretical. It was enacted in the Kabirian mysteries. Initiation rites practiced in the volcanic regions of Limnos and Lesbos, closely associated with Hephaestus and the power of fire. And like the Eleusinian mysteries, the Kabirian rites were not about belief and not about moral instruction. They were about transformation. Now we have to be precise here. We do not know the inner details of these rites. Like all major Greek mysteries, they were protected by silence. What survives are fragments, references, and philosophical commentaries. But what survives is enough to reveal the principle. Initiation meant exposure to fire, not as punishment, but as revelation. And here, fire does not mean physical flames alone. In Greek metaphysical language, pyr, fire, is not merely an element. It is a principle of activation, the force that reveals structure, the power that separates the essential from the accidental. Fire is what cannot be deceived. It does not add form. It removes what does not belong. This is why later philosophers, such as Porphyry, insist that the soul is not purified by washing, but by fire. Water may cleanse the surface. Fire tests the very core. Fire transforms. What cannot endure it falls away. What is essential remains. And this is not moral judgment, it is ontological testing. And this is why Hephaestus is not merely a craftsman, he is the archetype of inner transmutation. He does not create through command or imagination, but through heat, resistance, and refinement. He works precisely where form meets limitation, where intelligence descends into matter and must endure density, friction, and constraint. And the same law applies to the human being. In Greek thought, the human is shaped by the same power that shapes the cosmos, fire, energy. The soul enters embodiment through fire, and it is only through fire that it can be reshaped. This is the secret preserved silently in the Kabirian tradition. Purification is not symbolic, but transformative. Not the removal of sins, but the exposure of what is false. The human being is shaped the same way the world is shaped, through heat that reveals, through resistance that clarifies, and through the courage to remain present, while what does not belong to you finally burns away. Now, one more clarification because this matters. The name of the Kabirian rites is etymologically obscure, as is common with ancient mysteries, but their inner logic is unmistakable. Everything about them points to fire, not as a metaphor, but as function. The verb kavo means I burn. And this is where modern explanations often miss the Greek mind entirely. Many modern theories attempt to explain the Kabirian name through external linguistic comparisons, for example, proposals linking it to a Semitic root, Kabir, meaning great, or to terms glossed as friend or associate. Even if such comparisons are discussed, notice what happens when you reduce a mystery to labels like great, friend, associate. Great tells you nothing about how something works. It shows no inner process. It reveals no transformation. And friend, associate, is worse. It turns mystery into some kind of social category, transmutation into a guild, and fire into an occupation. But Greek thought does not work primarily with labels. It works with verbs, with movements, with processes. Kavo means I burn. I alter through fire. Temno means I cut, I discern. Pheno, I reveal, I bring something into appearance. Manthano, I learn, I am changed inwardly. In this language, words do not merely describe, they activate. Type Zeus or Aphrodite on Google and see what comes up. All the name explanations are taking you away from the deeper meanings that we are investigating here, downgrading it to almost kindergarten levels of understanding. Why? When you connect Kabirian rites, fire, pyr, Hephaestus, ordeal and transmutation, you're not doing etymology as a hobby here, you are reading function. And this is precisely why the continuity of meaning is so often broken, because if it isn't broken, something dangerous becomes obvious. That there is an inner technology of consciousness, that purification is not something moral, it is ontological, that a human being is not saved by believing, but by enduring, that knowledge is not merely transmitted, it is tested, and the truth is not accepted, it's what survives. And that is not easily managed by theological systems, academically neutralized interpretation, or cultural relativism. It is the uncompromising Greek demand of not believe and be comforted, but wake up or burn. And now that I've said the word academic, a deeper irony needs to be exposed here. Even the word academic itself originates in a sacred and initiatory context. The term comes from the academy, the sacred grove outside Athens where Plato taught, and it took its name from Academos, a local heroic figure and guardian of that land. According to Athenian tradition, Academos was the one who revealed the hidden truth. He disclosed where Theseus had concealed Helen, thereby preventing the destruction of Athens by the Dioscuri. Even all of these names hide allegories and deeper meaning. Metaphorically, Helen of Troy is not a person, she is a function of consciousness. She represents the object of attraction that draws awareness away from its center. And for this act, the place was spared and his name was preserved. And this matters because Academos was not remembered as a warrior, but as the one who revealed what was hidden at the right moment, a figure of truth, disclosure, and orientation, not opinion, not rhetoric, not comfort. The academy, therefore, was not merely a school in the modern sense. It was a consecrated space grounded in heroic memory, ritual order, discipline of life, and inner preparation. Philosophy, there was not neural observation, it was a way of life. The famous inscription, "Let no one untrained in geometry enter," did not refer to technical skill, it referred to inner readiness, the capacity for measure, structure, and orientation of the mind. Knowledge was not separated from transformation. To know meant to be changed. So when today the word academic is used to imply distance, detachment, safety from consequence, or supposed cognitive neutrality, something essential has been inverted here. The original academy did not aim at comfort, it aimed at clarity. It did not protect the individual from the truth of self-knowledge. It prepared the individual to endure it. So the question is unavoidable. Who is misusing the word? Not those who treat knowledge as a transformative ordeal, but those who assume that understanding can exist without inner consequence. In the Greek sense, truth was never neutral. It demanded reorientation. It demanded discipline. It demanded risk. And this is why the Greek tradition does not say, believe and be comforted. It says, understand and be changed. Burn it all away.
Conclusion: the threshold of Hestia. Hephaestus reveals how fire becomes world, how the unseen takes shape, how intelligence becomes matter, how the soul remembers itself through the heat of experience. But creation through fire is only one side of the cosmic order. Every act of shaping, every form that enters existence, every structure that endures depends on something deeper, a center that is not moving. Hephaestus gives the world a body. But what gives the world a place? What holds the cosmos together? What anchors the world of the senses and becoming so that it doesn't dissolve into chaos? To answer this, we will turn to the most silent of all gods, the one whose fire never ends, and the one who stands at the beginning and end of everything. Socrates says that Hestia is the only god that always remains at Olympus. So the next episode is Hestia, the center that holds the world.